Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Deez, this is my workshop, and today I want to tackle something that's really been bothering me, and it is this mill vise. This vise was one of those El Cheapos that you could get on Amazon. I think I paid 60 bucks for it. It's not Vevor brand, but it is a generic, cheaply made version. Sure, I would love to have a Kurt vise or something that's professionally made and quality for sure, but I just don't have that in my budget. But what I'm really bothered with by this one is the jaw lift. No matter what I do with the current configuration, it just has jaw lift, and my parallels are always coming loose no matter how slow I try to take it. It certainly could be my technique and how I'm approaching it, but I really think it's time to pull this off of here, inspect it, completely disassemble it. I disassembled most of it before, but I want to take the fixed jaw, I want to take everything off, deburr everything, tighten everything up the way it should be, see if I can make some improvements with it, and just see if we can eliminate some of this jaw lift. I know there's always going to be a little bit of jaw lift, but I am really struggling with this particular vise. And ultimately it's impacting the outcomes of the projects that I'm working on. And if I am to get into some more model engines, things like that, I think it's going to impact the quality or even some of the precision that I'm going to have to meet in order to make some of those parts. Today's project is going to be tearing this thing apart, taking it off of here, tearing it apart. Ultimately, we're going to get this back in here, we're going to get it trimmed, and hopefully eliminate that jaw lift. I'm going to bring you down here and show you exactly what I'm talking about before we take this thing off. And you know, I'm sure many of you experience that too. If you know the trick and you know how to properly fix this, let me know. And I know there's a ton of videos about this out there on the internet. Blondie's probably got a bunch. I think Joe Pye tackled this one. So I've looked at those videos as well. I just think that this vise needs some attention. So let's get you down here. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, and then we'll take this thing apart. So let's pick a set of parallels. And these are also off-brand. Maybe that's part of the problem too. And we'll take this part that I recently made, which has already been face milled flat. So, you know, my sides could obviously be off. There could be an issue there. But when I put this thing in here, and we give it a little bit of pressure, we can push down on it, and there's there's friction and tension on those parallels. So if we give it a little tap, they don't move, right? That one moves a little, give it a little tap. Right now, the parallels, I mean, I could move them if I want to shove hard, but this isn't all cranked down and tightened down real tight. But the minute that I try to give it a little bit, it lifts. So I think the jaw lift is, I know this is common, happens to a lot of people, but it really is causing me some frustration. This backside lifts a lot more than the front side. You know, I can tighten it down, tap it a little more, and when I tighten it again, you know, it's back to moving around. And there we go. So I know actually this one's coming in pretty well. Aluminum seems to be worse, but I imagine it flexes easier and causes more flex in the part. But I would, you know, I'm not going to eliminate it totally, but I do want to get this thing off of here, tear it completely apart, clean it up, and see if we can improve some of that. As you can see, we got that off of there with ease, just 2 bolts, and there's quite the mess underneath here. So I think what I'm going to do is get everything cleaned up. Just show you down here what happens. You just get all this oil, dirt, and debris. It's really difficult to get that out of there. One thing I might consider doing, it would be really nice to fill these slots with something, and maybe I could just leave those rubber mats off. They do protect the table, but you know, it'd be nice to prevent stuff from getting down in here. I know they make silicone inserts for these things. I could buy a product, but I've also got lots of plastics. Maybe I'll make my own inserts for those. Take some measurements, and who knows? Maybe that'll be a project. But we got that thing off of there, and now we can start disassembling it. Well, here's the vise. Let's go ahead and take some of these bits and pieces off and get down to its core components. First off, this thing needs heavily deburred. I should have done this a long time ago. That's the first thing you should probably do with any of these cheap things, is completely disassemble them. But I was anxious at the time to get things going and learn how to do some milling. But now I'm getting frustrated with the jaw lift, so it's time to tear into this thing. But you can see, like, all of these screw holes, they're not deburred or chamfered. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that. I'm gonna use a file and take care of any edges. Now, one thing that I did do in the past, I used a stone and I got any high spots. You can almost see a few high spots on the edges where I got those in the past. So I know that this thing was, there's a high spot there. You can see where it's shiny. So I know that I got this thing flat so that when it was on the mill, we were okay. Yeah, there's just a lot of rough edges from the casting. Some of it doesn't matter because it's recessed. A lot of filth, dirt, you know, I need to get all that cleaned out. You can see, but there is the raw casting, the main component. I'm gonna get all this cleaned up. But before we do that, I thought I would show you some other things that I'm gonna address. So if you look here, we've got a little bit of a milled spot here. When this thing is sitting in the vise, and then you got your lead screw in there. The back movable jaw is this piece. This little lip back here, or sorry, this one. There's a screw that rides in here and keeps it from, you know, keeps it all kind of locked together. This front portion, you can almost see a detent there, that rides on this side. So if you look here, you can see that little bump out there. But all these rough castings, all these rough pieces in here, I think can affect how this thing's gonna function. So I'm gonna do my best to clean up any obvious boogers on this thing and just get that stuff cleaned up. I'm gonna go through all of these things and get all these cleaned up, but there's a close-up of that part if you're curious. The other thing is these parts here, I wanna make sure they're flat. This is what rides underneath on the bottom side, and you wanna make sure that's nice and flat, doesn't have any burrs. Because when you tighten it down, maybe that's part of the jaw lift, maybe this is part of it. I'm sure there's a better design than what this is, but then you have your lead screw. I don't like this design. It's just, I might put this in the lathe and just turn a flat spot here, because this ultimately is what screws on here to tighten down. The problem is you tighten it into these threads and then you can't get past the threads. So I think what I'm gonna do, now that obviously I can see where this screw tightens in, I'm gonna flatten that out and get some threads gone off of this piece. And then when I tighten it up, I won't have that issue, and I'll do a little chamfering there. So that's something else I wanna improve. It's just a dumb design, I think. It works, but you can see that that's pretty chewy. The way that thing's made, the way that mounts on there with this set screw. So I wanna fix that. Of course, we have my fixed jaw. I want to deburr all the edges on this and kind of soften the corners. Some of them are pretty sharp. It is ground pretty flat though, overall. There's some rough casting on this one, mill scale. Here's the movable jaw, very similar. I'll deburr all these as well, chamfer the holes. One thing that I did find that was of concern, in my opinion, is these holes here where the fixed jaw and movable jaws mount. There's burrs on those too. Well, that's going to affect how your removable jaws mount on here. Here's the fixed jaw. Yeah, you can catch your fingernail on that. There should be no burrs on those. That's something I'm going to take care of. That probably doesn't matter functionally, but look at the burr they just left on cutting these keys. It doesn't matter, but take a little extra time to, well, I guess that's what you get if you buy a Kurt, not whatever this is. It's not even Vevor. Both of those keyways are like that. The rest of the stuff is pretty good. Again, I'm just gonna deburr everything, make sure there's no issues with anything else, and make sure there's no high spots. And we'll try to reassemble this thing, lube it up, and make this thing a little bit better than it is. let's see what we can do here on the bench. So we got our keys deburred. I mean, they're not squared up, but that's fine. I just wanted to get those burrs off of those. So those two are ready to go. Right and left. File these and deburr these. I've got some round files. The idea is just to make sure there's no burrs pushing against anything. So. I got my lead screw modified where I think it's gonna work out better. The only thing we got to do now is reassemble this thing. I've got everything deburred that needs deburred. Now it's time to reassemble. So I know this will go in here. We'll get some oil while we're assembling. First thing you got to do when reassembling this is put the lead screw on as well as the nut. Ask me how I know. One thing that's kind of bugged me about this setup is the chip guard actually limits me from going back as far as I would like to. So as you can see, I can go back to about there. Well, I still have about an inch of travel before I get into the back of the mill. Yeah, just right at an inch. So I'm losing travel that's pretty precious, really. What's causing that is there's two cap head screws underneath here that hold this accordion on. So I think what I'm going to try to do, this is pretty stout steel bracket. Let's see if I can bend it up enough just to get those cap head screws up and above the scale, the glass scale for the DRO, and see if I can gain a couple more inches. But before I do that, I want to bring the vise back over here and see if it's also hitting, because if so, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be able to go any further. So let's see what we got. Well, that wouldn't matter anyway, because the vise in the middle is causing me issues from going back farther anyway. So unless I plan on running this without the vise, I don't see the need to modify that. That's disappointing. It would be nice if this accordion was actually up another inch or so, and then I could clear and get a little more space. The only other thing I could do is bring this out farther. I don't know, does anybody mount them like that? I would lose one of my directions. I mean, that's as far out this way as I could come, but I want to mount it in the center. Alright, well, never mind. I'm not going to modify that, but that's something I might do in the future if I decide to take this vise off. Well, you start adding add-ons and accessories, and you start losing a lot of real estate, a lot of your work area. Well, we need to tram this vise in. It's time to put this back on here. I have everything cleaned up. Everything's ready to go. It's time to tram this thing in. I'm going to use Blondie Hack's technique. She described it in one of her videos. I will link to that in this video. I found it super helpful. There's many techniques. Basically, you got to realize that where you're trying to indicate your fixed jaw, it's really more of an arc. So this is probably one of the most frustrating things you can do, is try to tram in your mill vise on your table. So this technique, I'm going to give it a shot. This is the second time I've tried it. I don't remember how much success I had the first time, but this is what we're going to do. Basically, we want to take a parallel that is as long as your pivot points are. So if you look down here, you have your parallel. You want it to be at least just beyond or as long as your two screws that are going to mount your vise in. So we'll tighten that up. And there is air. There can be air introduced with this. Blondie explains it, but you could have a chip behind this. You could have, your parallel may not be as true as the fixed jaw. But this is a technique I'm going to use. I think it's going to serve me well. Let's go ahead and get everything ready to go, and then we'll give this a shot. Well, I'm not doing something right. I'm going to keep fiddling with this, and then I'll bring you back. But it really comes down to being frustrating, because this face is more of an arc back and forth because your pivot points are behind what you're trying to tram in. I'll keep working on it and bring you back. We're about 1 thou. It's so touchy. I had it within a half thou, but the vibrations of the machine, you just barely bump something. I've got this about between a thou and a half thou trammed, and I know this isn't proper. This is a cheese plate, but it's what I got, so that's what I'm using. I'm getting really close. I think I'm going to try another attempt to just get it nailed into a half thou, but otherwise, that's it. You get the idea. If you bring the pivot points out past your screws, it's a little easier. But, you know, other people make this look super easy. This isn't easy to tram these things in. I don't care what people say. I need more practice, obviously, but it's a tricky task. All right, I think we got it. All right, let's see how we're looking here. There we go. Are we still on, or did I come off of there? Oh, we'll bring it back just a minute. No more than half a thou out across the entire distance. The last time I actually did the check, it was spot on. So there's going to be variances in this machine, variances in the setup that I have, variances in the workpiece. I'm going to stick with that. That's a half a thou. I'm going to tighten everything down, and I'm going to call that trammed in good enough for me and the work that I do. But it's definitely tricky to get this vise trammed in. Well, everybody, we've got everything trammed in within a half a thou. These machines do have flex in them. Rigidity is not their strong points. I can push this thing more than that. Having that trammed in as good as it is okay for the projects that I'm working on. Sure, I want it to be perfect, but I don't think I'm ever going to be able to achieve that with this machine and this setup. Plus, this is not a precision instrument, this cheese plate, but it is pretty flat. It's ground flat, so it worked out. I didn't have anything long enough that was as true as that. So let's see if I'm not very optimistic, to be honest with you, but let's see if we made any improvements in our jaw lift after all of that fiddling around. We have everything cleaned, everything trimmed, everything put back in. And I know jaw lift is a thing that everybody has to deal with, but it sure would be nice if we improved this a little bit. And of course, there's still some jaw lift, but there we go. Still pretty tight, moves a little, but that's the whole. There we go. So you still have to tap. Everybody does that. You got to tap your parts down in order to make sure that they're tight. But I think I have improved the jaw lift a little bit. I was really struggling with some of the materials. Like I said, aluminum does tend to lift a little more. Plus, if your part isn't true, you have that trouble. But this is pretty tight. And these parallels are nice and tight as well. I think we improved it. If anything, we deburred it and cleaned the thing out. It needed it anyway. we got to review the table, and overall, I think I would like to figure out a way to fill these gaps in the table, in the milling table, rather than have, you know, these rubber mats and stuff on here. It'd be nice to be able to fill these holes with some, either I'll make it out of nylon, or maybe I'll buy the silicone versions of those. But it would be nice to be able to fill those and just have a cover for these holes so I don't get so many chips down in there. But honestly, that's part of it. It's a mill, and you're slinging chips around, it's going to get everywhere. So with that, I hope you enjoyed seeing the teardown of this particular vise, and then tramming it back in. There's many techniques out there. I am no expert. Please do your research. There's all kinds of smart people out there that's gone through this. Tons of videos. You can find it yourself. I'll link to Blondie's because I mentioned her name in this video. But overall, I'm happy that I did take this apart. It is frustrating to try to get this trammed in. I spent way more time on it than I should have, but in the end, I've got it trammed in within a half a thou. I'm happy with that, and I'm going to get on to milling some material, and you'll see that in another video. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It helps out the channel, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching, everybody.